Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Boeing and Nigeria's Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development have signed a memorandum of understanding to strengthen the country's aviation sector. Africa continues to be a promising market with its overall air traffic growth forecasted well above the average global growth rate over the next 20 years. As Africa's largest economy, Nigeria's aviation sector is projected to grow rapidly, contributing significantly to the overall African market, with the potential to handle more than 50 million passengers by the year 2040. Well, we're now being joined from London for a chat by Anita, Mendiratta, global consultant and advisor to many in the travel, tourism and aviation sectors, including UN Tourism Secretary General. It's a pleasure to have you on the morning show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, awesome. Let's go straight into it. The recent MoU between Boeing and Nigeria's Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development is indeed a significant step towards strengthening the country's aviation sector. How exactly do you see this partnership enhancing Nigeria's position in the global aviation market? And what are the key areas that Boeing's expertise can make the most impact?
Indeed. This news is excellent. It's excellent for Nigeria and it's excellent for Africa. Because importantly, aviation in Africa represents $63 billion in terms of what it generates in revenue and also over 8 million jobs. So this is very good news for the continent because ultimately Nigeria is a hub for the continent. Nigeria needs to advance in aviation so Africa can advance in aviation. So this is really excellent news and Boeing is absolutely the right partner for this. Representing as well that still Africa, for all of its activity, only represents 2% of global trade when it comes to cargo and global travel when it comes to actually passenger movements. So the potential is huge, and this MoU is a significant starting point to unlock that potential.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'd like to ask why you believe that Boeing will be a good partner for Nigeria. Very recently, the CEO of Ethiopian Airlines, Africa's largest carrier, came out to say that they had to lease planes because Boeing has failed to meet delivery targets. We also have complaints from Ryanair Holdings, which is the largest budget airline in Europe, saying that Boeing has failed to meet their the deliveries that for the planes that they had ordered. So how do we trust that Boeing would be a good partner and that they will hold up their end of the bargain and will not fail us how they have failed Ethiopia or Ryanair?
It's a very understandable question, especially right now. As much as Boeing has a lot going wrong, Boeing also does a lot right. Now, we need to keep in mind that Boeing is a carrier in terms of cargo, passengers, and defense. 4 out of 10 commercial aircraft that we see in the skies around the world are Boeing. 7 out of 10 in Africa are Boeing airlines. And over 22 countries rely on Boeing for over 1,500 aircraft around the continent. Boeing understands Africa. And importantly, the work that it's going to do with Nigeria in terms of strengthening the ecosystem. So airports, airlines, air traffic control, capacity building, managing supply chains, managing security, all of that they're doing with Nigeria, they've done that with other countries. They've done it with the US, with the UAE, they've done it with Saudi Arabia, with South Korea, Australia, India. A world of nations have relied on Boeing for exactly this upliftment of the ecosystem that they're going to do with Nigeria. So which really is a perfect fit of a partner, and there's a great degree in which Nigeria and the continent can be reassured in knowing that this MoU will bring excellence to aviation for Nigeria and for Africa as a whole.
Right then, but with Africa's air traffic growth projected to outpace the global average over the next 20 years, and Nigeria poised to handle more than 50 million passengers by 2040, what specific strategies should Nigeria adopt to effectively manage this rapid growth and ensure sustainability in its aviation system, especially on the back end of this deal with Boeing?
Indeed. And it's interestingly, it's at the back end of the pandemic as well.
Yes.
Because we need to keep in mind that almost 16,000 commercial aircraft were grounded globally during the pandemic. So everywhere around the world, they're reactivating the entire ecosystem for aviation. The beauty of Africa, and one of the reasons why it's outpacing the recovery rates with, IATA and UN Tourism declaring that there was 5% growth in aviation and travel compared to 2019 in the first quarter of this year, is because of the fact that Africa very smartly is focusing not just travel into Africa and into Nigeria, but within the African continent. The re-establishment and development of new routes of Africa for Africa is vital. And that's why the leadership of the airlines, of civil aviation, and of the aircraft manufacturers like Boeing are focusing on making sure that it's not just aviation coming into regions, but within regions. And in Africa, that's particularly important because the exponential growth that can come from simply Africa working for Africa and with Africa cannot be underestimated. So this is again why this MoU is so important, leveraging the hub that is Nigeria for Africa to unlock African growth for Africa's development's sake. This is wonderful news for the continent, and the global aviation industry is no doubt excited about this MoU being signed because of the wider implications and the smartness of leadership in making these decisions for Nigeria and for Africa's development as a whole.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to ask you about safety. If you believe there should be any safety concerns, because of this year alone, Boeing has faced several significant controversies that have intensified scrutiny over the company. There was currently the Starliner spacecraft that is supposed to return to Earth without the astronauts. We have the incident where a door plug was blown out of the Alaska Airlines flight. And of course, in 2018 and 2019, there were the 737 MAX crashes that happened. So there have been some safety concerns over at Boeing. We even had a whistleblower at Boeing who passed away. So I'd like to ask that, do you think there are safety concerns when it comes to Boeing? And why Boeing would be a better partner than, let's say, an Airbus, for example?
Indeed. So Boeing is taking very seriously the issues that it's had with safety. And even the new CEO coming in, when Kelly decided to come in and take over for David when he was leaving, this is important because the new CEO came in, having left retirement. He heard a calling to step up and help the aviation industry in its recovery. And that recovery is very much focused on safety, which is fantastic because that ultimately is what aviation will always be focused on as priority number one. So it's good to know that we have Boeing, again, a manufacturer that understands African aviation better than most, that is going to be looking at not just unlocking the potential for Africa, but doing it with safety as an absolute priority, and working with the Nigerian government to make sure that all aviation development is safe and secure, to make sure that ultimately it grows in a way that is truly sustainable. So it is really wonderful that we have partners coming together and leaders coming together that are honest about the opportunity and also honest about the challenges and can speak about them openly. This is a very good thing because ultimately behind aviation, behind airlines and manufacturers are people. And everyone wants to make sure that aviation, the ultimate link that connects all of us in the world, does so safely so that we can continue to fly with peace of mind to the people and places that we love and shipping the items that we need.
Thank you so much, Anita. And as we begin to wrap up, I want us to just touch on very quickly on implementation challenges, because it is something that we see quite often in Nigeria, because the MoU in itself is a promising development, but implementation remains a challenge. As a global aviation consultant yourself, are there critical factors that stand out that need to be addressed just to ensure that this partnership translates into tangible improvements in Nigeria's aviation infrastructure and services?
It goes exactly to what you say. It's a partnership, and it's making sure that this is a continuous conversation on how to advance the industry. It's a continuous conversation on not just the hardware of the industry, the aircrafts, the airports, the airlines, but the software, the people behind it, making sure that skills development is a critical part of this, and developing a culture in aviation that's focused on safety, that's focused on excellence, and that's focused on pride in countries being able to carry their citizens and others around the world. Because when we look at Nigeria, for instance, we have 20 airports that ultimately are servicing 22 international airlines that depend on Nigeria to be able to welcome and exit their cargo and their passengers safely. So really, this is about making sure that this partnership works, and it works for every single person that's involved in the aviation industry and relies on the aviation industry. And that's why ultimately this MoU is an important handshake for Nigeria and for the continent. And the leaders are taking that to heart as they take it out to the market.
All right, then, thank you so much for your time on the morning show. We appreciate your analysis and your answers to the questions.